as less heavier for you than any other time.
Wow.
Okay.
But it's okay to be funny too, Loza.
Will there be jokes?
We can throw one here and there. We can have good time. This is going to be a good presentation, I believe. I'm very, very happy about this presentation.
Okay, we're ready. I'm going to start the record. Dr. Baldi.
Thank you. This is the special meeting of the governing board of the Vallejo City Unified School District. It's now 4:06 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Young.
Present.
Trustee Gardner.
Present.
Trustee Fox.
Present.
Vice President Gross.
He is trying to get back in, so
Okay,
will
will be present. And President Ubaldi.
Here. Let us go. Let's have a rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, I don't have an agenda in front of me. I assume we have, I'll get that a little later. What's the next one for me?
Adoption of the agenda.
Adoption of the agenda. May I entertain a motion, please, for the adoption of the agenda?
I'll move to adopt.
Been moved. Second, please.
Second.
It's been seconded by Vice President Groves. And motion was made. Thank you, sir. Adoption was made by Christie. Roll call, please.
Trustee Young.
Thank you.
Trustee Gardner.
Aye.
Trustee Fox.
Aye.
Vice President Gross.
Aye.
And President Ubaldi.
Aye. Next item is consent item. The minutes of last board meeting and also the approval of the Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month Resolution 2975, and I'm sure you have read that. And I'm sure many of you also know the controversy still existing between some who do not want it called Hispanic, and there are those who are in favor of Latinx, and but it's not resolved because the Latin feel they're not Mexicans, and so on and so forth. So we obviously Superintendent Spalding felt that we needed to have both of them so we don't get in trouble. We would be unless Rosa has some other suggestion. But anyway, that's before us. May I have a motion for the adoption of the minutes and also the resolution?
I so moved.
I move by Vice President Groves, seconded by.
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Dr. Young.
Dr. Young.
Oh, Dr. Young, yes. Those roll call, please.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Was it seconded by Dr. Young or Trustee Gardner?
Moved by Vice President Gross.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Young for the vote. Trustee Young.
Aye.
Trustee Gardner.
Aye.
Trustee Fox.
Aye.
Vice President Gross.
Aye.
And President Ubaldi.
Aye.
Thank you.
Now they were on item 4, information item study. This is an information that we have before us. This is not an action item. And it will be, I'll give it to the superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Ubaldi. The board had asked a little while ago for an update and a workshop on the budget, and I think mostly focused on the funding that the district is receiving, like so many other school districts around the state, with specified state and federal, primarily federal, really COVID relief funds. And we received kind of a first wave of those last year, ARP and CARES Act. And then there have been a number of waves of federal and state COVID relief funding to come since that time. And it's a sizable amount of money. And so we've been working very diligently on cabinet and are also seeking out input from our stakeholders, because one of the things that we must do is write a plan for the ESSER 3 money. So for one of these 6 areas of funding, there actually must be a plan that is submitted to the state and approved by the board in October. But what we've been doing is working to kind of integrate these funds around the areas and the kinds of criteria, the kinds of items that these funds were designed to assist school districts with. And that's taken some doing, because when you have 6 different sources, each one has similar, but some of them a little bit different kinds of uses and purposes, and they have different deadlines and timelines for expenditures. Some need to be expended by next year. Some need to be expended by the year after. Some need to be expended by the year after that. And so it's kind of doing like you've seen us do in the past. For those of you who've been around for a while, remember categorical funding, when we have a lot of state categorical programs and our federal categorical programs. And so you're kind of moving money around kind of almost like a shell game to make it work, so that you can get the kinds of support systems and programs and the things that you want to do for students, but in a way that you really fully utilize your funding. You're not sending any of it back, and that you're meeting the requirements of the funding. So we've done that. Just a couple of takeaways that before I give this over to Rosa that I would want the board to have. One is that this is very, 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 very complex process, and you will see a lot of moving parts, and you will see a lot of items. Cabinet has been working on this for months to try to get this together, and I think we've come to a place where we have kind of a set of recommendations. It's draft, because we'll be bringing some of this to you, in October. But I think we feel like we've done a really good job to best utilize the funding and the timelines to support the activities that we're going to be doing. That's number one. Number two is we've also tried to be very conservative in our budget planning. There's no guarantee that we receive any kind of additional or supplemental funds in the future. Now that could happen, but pretty much we've gotten a pretty big surge of funding, but we don't know when the pandemic is going to end. And we don't know what kinds of twists and turns it's going to take. As you know, we know a lot more now than we did a year and a half ago. And there are a lot of things that we're dealing with now that we didn't deal with a year and a half ago. So we've tried to be very, very conservative and really plan ahead and be ready for anything. I think the one thing that we could probably agree on is we've gotten good funding from the state and the federal government, but we don't always get a lot of help. And so, a lot of times we're sent money, but then it's up to us to go find the support that we need. So you'll see things like, testing or like COVID testing items, for example. The state's not sending us COVID testers. The state is sending us money and saying, you find the COVID testers. And what we're finding a lot of times with COVID testers is we're seeing those costs go up and up and up. Some of those COVID testers have not been entirely reliable. And so we're just trying to be ready for anything on that. Just kind of the final thing is I just lost my train of thought. I think, the main thing is just to know that we're trying to be ready for anything, and that is very complex. But I think we're in a good place, and I think you're going to see that we're in a good place. And so anyways, with that, I will turn it over to Rosa and let her kind of walk you through the PowerPoint that she has.
Rosa, before you do that, I have a question to our superintendent, if I may. Two things, Superintendent. One is, do you have a point person who is actually in charge of these numbers? Because as you said, that there are quite a few and complex, number one. And I certainly don't want to add another further challenges on our chief of CBO. Secondly, is this the funds that you have tapped to pay off our loans? Those are two questions I have, sir.
Good question. And you've actually preempted a little bit of our conversation, but the point people you're looking at, it's all the people on this screen become the point people. We do have, and you'll recall that we made a change in our organizational structure to create a director of categorical programs, or had previously been a coordinator position. So we've done that, and I believe we're assigning a budget analyst person to that person as well. And that's because there's such a massive influx of funding, and because all the funding has to be accounted for very, very closely, and it will be heavily audited. So everything that you see tonight, as it gets spent, will have to pass audit in future years. And I think that's what's making a lot of superintendents around the state very nervous, because it's a lot to account for, and you want to make sure you don't have to send any of it back. As to the loan, I think you're going to see some pretty good news that have come out that we've achieved some savings. It's not something we set out to do, but like like many districts, because we ran the bulk of our year last year in distance learning, which is typically less expensive because there are a number of kinds of costs that you normally have during the school year, like buses and substitute teachers and a variety of other kinds of things. We were able to realize a fairly healthy end balance, and Rose will get a little more into that in a few minutes. But we've assigned what was left over from last year to some specific items, and one of those items that really does take up much of the money that we achieved in savings is the payoff of the loan, and we are looking to do that in the next few months.
All right. Thank you, sir. Back to you, Ms. Rosa Loza, Chief Business Officer.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Superintendent, for the introduction. Good afternoon, Board of Trustees, community members. Pretty much, we covered a lot of the presentation, but I will go over the slides anyway. I'm very, like I say, very enthusiastic and very feeling good about this presentation, since it's going to give us an idea where we ended up for the year in closing, and I will give an update on the budget for the 21-22 school year, and also we will go over the expenditure plan for this additional one-time money. I'm going to share my my screen, so please let me know if you can see my presentation, okay? Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. You're welcome to make any questions. I'd rather to wait until the end so I can write it down and so answer accordingly, but you still are welcome to make any questions as we go through the presentation.
And I'll be happy to recognize your hand if you wish to have greater clarification from our Chief Business Officer. Thank you.
Rosa, you have a real bad echo. At least I'm catching a real bad echo.
I will then suggest to everyone else to mute themselves so I can minimize the echo while I'm doing the presentation.
Very good.
Thank you. I will start the presentation then. The agenda for this workshop consists of recap for the year in closing, the budget update for the 21-22 school year, the components of the additional funding related to the COVID funding, and also the preliminary expenditure plan for these particular resources. I will go over the next steps, and also I will take care of the questions as they come. Here is the summary of the year in closing. As Mr. Superintendent Spalding said, we had some earnings and all of this related mainly due to that distance learning. So the district was able to transfer to the special reserve fund $10.3 million. And so we have some balance in the special reserve, and with transfer of $10.3 million, now this fund has $17.16 million. As indicated on the slide, some of that stuff is already, assigned because of negotiated salary. The offer is still on the table, but the rest of the money is intended to use it as to pay off the loan. And that's something that I'm very excited about it. You will hear more as we go into the year and for the first interim. This is the recap or the update on the budget for this year. The district LCFF, 21-22 LCFF revenue will be based still on the 1920 ADA and not on the 21-22 ADA. And we will receive additional concentration funding. All of this will result in additional $12 million. Because the additional concentration funding, the district will need to spend approximately $2.4 million in services to students that are disadvantaged, socioeconomic disadvantaged, homeless, and English learners. And so we have to do that because of the additional money. Also, as a result of the state unemployment insurance rate adjustment that went from 1.23 when we adopted the budget to 0.5%, the district is estimated to save roughly $400,000. And even though all of this mentioned, all of this stuff that I just said is just picturing our that the financial state of the district is getting better and improved, I want to mention that we wanted to be conservative and that the district will still have deficit spent in the 22-23 year and the upcoming years or the subsequent years. I will be revising all of these. The district will revise all of these budgets in preparation for the first interim, and we will look at the actual enrollment, the actual staffing, the carryovers, and additional expenditures for learning loss and other COVID-related expenditures. Yes, sir. You are muted.
Yes, sorry, I'm muted. Rosa, I have a question on back. The LCFF money is off the 1920 ADA. Now the money that we possibly will get next year will come from 21-22. Right?
It's gonna be a current year ADA. We've been funded based on the 1920, but that's when 2022-23 is gonna be the year that is gonna be decisive for all of the districts because we're gonna be actually funded on the actual ADA.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question. We're looking a year from now that ADA that we have been floating with is going to drop quite a bit.
Yes, but remember, we've been very conservative and we have been budgeting or projecting our budget on the actual ADA and not on the 1920.
And like the concentration money is going to be gone, so we will. It worries me. It worries me. That's all. So, but I'm glad that we're staying very conservative. But yes. Anyhow, but yeah, you helped me with looking down the road. But thank you.
Yes.
Oops.
Okay. So now we move into the district's ESSER 3 and other care funding expenditure plan. We already kind of preview all of these on the conversations that Mr. Spalding, our superintendent, and Dr. Ubaldi had. But I will go over these slides. I know that this is a lot of information. I just like for you to just take them in and wait until I get to the graph and the colorful information that I have for you. And before I go more into details, I want to say thank you to all of the cabinet members, superintendent, for working so hard on this, putting together this plan and all this information. So, as you can see over here, I start with gear funding. I want you to know that the any school district that received this type of funding, or elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund under the, I believe, American Rescue Plan, are required to develop the plan for how these funds are going to be used. At the minimum, to address the students' emotional, social, emotional, and mental health needs, as well as the opportunity to close the gaps that existed before and then intensify after the COVID-19 pandemic. As mentioned as well, the plan must be adopted by the governing board in a public meeting, and this has to happen on or before October 29. And within 5 days of the plan adoption, has to be provided to the county for then they to submit to the state for review and approval. So I will go to the next one. Oh, and I wanted to say too, in some of the information that I go over here, year funding expires on the September 2023, and it targets mainly a student learning, instructional time, additional core academic supports, and also integrate service that supports teaching and learning. Yes, Dr. Young.
I have a question.
Yes. You're muted, Dr. Young.
I don't see what category in the year funding addresses social and emotional issues for students.
As I mentioned, Ms. Superintendent Spalding mentioned the different fundings address social and emotional support to students. So I'm gonna go over that, in a nutshell, what are the most main targets for each funding. And then when we get to the actual spreadsheet, we will see the actual description and how the fundings are gonna be utilized. I can always send you a table with a description of the allowable uses for each of these resources, if that is okay, because it's just a lot of information to put it in such a small space on a slide presentation.
If I can jump in just real quick, I think the way the presentation is organized tonight is that it first kind of shows you what each of the 6 resources are, the funding sources. Some are state and some are federal. And then what are the purposes that each one is established for? And what you're going to see, I think, is that there's a lot of commonality between them, that there are a lot of themes that emerge over and over and over again. Some are a little bit different than the others. But what Rose is going to walk through with you is each one of these funding sources, what they're called, whether they're state or federal sources, and then what's an allowable expense under each one. And then when we get to the kind of a spreadsheet that she'll show, it's all color coded. It's very well organized. And then some tables, she'll show how those expenditures are being combined and how each one of those sources are being utilized in an integrated approach. So that, this one, like this thing has to happen year after next. So let's use the money that is expended by that time. This needs to happen right now. So let's use the money that runs out this year. And you'll see that we've done a lot of work in thinking about where do these items belong? What sources best support these? What sources allow these expenditures? And then when does this source need to be spent down? So yeah, she'll go through the different types of sources of revenue, and then she'll show you how it all comes together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're saying that we need to hold our questions until the...
Well, I don't want to be rude. I mean, if you have questions, you might have questions on the individual sources, which is fine, but it'll all come together, I promise.
Okay, that means hold our questions. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So this is a gear funding continuation. We do have some, this funding provides integrated support to the students to, like I say, to close that gap and addressing as well health and safety concerns. But these are not limited. These include, but are not limited to the purchasing of public health testing. Again, the state is giving us funding, but they're not giving us anything else other than here is the money. You find the ways to support all of the allowable uses for this funding. So we have lots of information, like I said, but at the end of the presentation, everything will come together. I promise that. So we have over here in-person instruction, or IPI. This funding expires in September 2024, and this funding purpose mainly are COVID testing, cleaning and disinfecting, personal protective equipment, ventilation, and other school site upgrades that are necessary to keep or maintain the students' health and the safety of the students. Salary for employees that provides in-person instruction services, and mental health support services that provide in conjunction with in-person instruction. You're gonna see a lot of repetition. There will be a lot of similarities between fundings as we go through these slides, and I will try to not repeat those because again, all of them are totally different, but at the same time, they have similarities on how you should spend this particular money. Well, here we have the bulk of the money that we receive. It is the ESSER 1, the ESSER 2, and the ESSER 3. ESSER 1 is expiring on September 30, 2022. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, they're expiring, ESSER 2 in September 2023, and ESSER 3 expires in September 2024. So these are three buckets kind of in one, and this is the bulk of the money that we receive. But all of them are trying to kind of come out with the similarities of all the three. These ESSER fundings are to target or to support any activity authorized, by SEM, to help individuals or students with disability. That's one thing that a lot of people do not mention, but we have that money to address those type of needs. Also, activities to address the needs of low-income students. Develop and implementing procedures and systems to improve the preparedness and response of the districts with these efforts. Also, this funding supports the training of the personnel or staff and professional development on how to sanitize and maximize these sources to stop the spread of the infections. This is like in this case, COVID. Also to purchase educational technology, and this includes hardware, software, licensing, and connectivity. This funding provides mental health services and support, like the other one that I just mentioned previously. ESSER funding help in the planning and implementing activities related to summer school learning and supplemental after-school programs. Also includes or provides classroom support and online learning, address the learning loss among the students, and also include the low-income students, English learners, and different than the other sources. This source, ESSER 3, address or support the school facility repairs and improvements, and this to enable the operations of the schools to minimize the risk of the the virus transmission and the exposure as well. So we have ESSER that supports its inspection and testing and maintenance and repair and everything that comes with it when it comes to facilities, mainly the indoor air quality. And he says something at the end that this particular funding support other activities that are necessary to maintain the operations and continue the services to the students. So this particular fund or funding is a little bit broad at the end because it supports other activities that are necessary to maintain the services to the students. The continuation. Another thing about the ESSER 3 in particular says that the district has to set aside 20% of this allocation to target or to utilize for learning loss mitigation. And some other main uses for this fund is maintaining the nutrition services, the cleaning and disinfecting the facilities, again, the personal protective equipment and materials necessary to provide students with opportunities for distance learning. Also, continue, like I say, developing and implementing procedures that are systematic, that help the district to respond to these efforts under COVID-19. Also to plan and coordinate and implement activities that are, that if the district closes for a long period of time, and this includes meals, providing meals, mainly technology for online learning, and to ensure that educational services can continue under any circumstances. That's why this is the pot of money that is the majority of the one-time money that has been received. Again, there is more common uses that are repeatable throughout the slides. They are not the same language, but it has the essence of what the uses of or the targets of this funds support. More details, as you can see, more details on the common uses of these ESSER 1, 2, and 3 funding, which implements the evidence-based activities to meet the comprehensive needs of the students, and also to track a student's attendance and improve the students' engagement in the distance education format. I already mentioned this funds actually, the purpose of this funding, target the inspection and testing and maintenance of replacement and everything that has to do with facilities, but mainly the indoor air quality. And again, develop and implement public health protocols, which is something that all of the school districts do. Additional ESSER components. I think that these are very important. The portion of this particular funding is to target summer learning or summer enrichment, extended days, comprehensive after school programs, which they are noted on the spreadsheet, the extended school year programs, full service community school, and again, mental health services and support to the students. More components that are helping us to understand that all the requirements and how we need to develop a plan and how to use these funds. Mainly what I'm seeing that the similarities in every single source is that the students, they address the student services, the support to them. And again, we have to make sure that we are cognizant when we put in together this plan, because it's going to be a plan that is going to be outed later on, and we have to keep track of everything that we do. More ESSER 3 components. I mentioned the 20% of funds is reserved for the learning loss and to address academic impact due to COVID. And so I have plenty, and I can go over and over and on the lists of the allowable uses of these funds. But again, I just trying to put the more, the main points, and whatever points that they have more essence and in what we are trying to do over here with the expenditure plan. Interventions and addressing the learning loss. I already mentioned as well. So for those students that are English learners, children with disabilities, and students experiencing homelessness, those that are in foster care, and migratory students as well. So we move into the extended learning opportunities over here. And so as you can see is approximately around 50% of the state funds were shifted from general fund, from the general state fund into federal stimulus funding. So the supplemental instructions and support strategies for this plan were approved back in May 19 and addressed the learning lost for the students. And now I say, wait for the colorful.
Can I jump in just real quick before you pull back the curtain? One thing I want to make sure that we emphasize for the board, you see 6 different programs and some are state and some are federal. There's a lot of alphabet soup here. But I want to emphasize for the board, there's only one for which we have to submit this plan, and that's the ESSER 3. It's the largest bucket of money. It's the last to be sent, and it's the last to be spent. But I want to kind of give you a little bit of background on that. That one requires a plan, not the other ones, because as this money rolled out, there were a number of organizations that have been really kind of watchdogging, school expenditures. Some of the same folks who have had some real questions and concerns, a little skeptical with school districts about how they're spending, for example, their supplemental concentration money, and really trying to hold, districts' feet to the fire to make sure that this is spent on the neediest students and on the students who fall into certain categories that are, make them most vulnerable in the schools, and that they're really held accountable to be spending those correctly, and that there also be community input for that. So we've been surveying our stakeholders as part of this process and gathering up that data, gathering up those results. And so when you see in October a plan, you'll say, wait, that's only for the 29 million of all this. That's because that's what's required, and it's only required for ESSER 3. That's what goes to you. That's what goes to the county. That's what goes to the state. But what Rosa is unveiling now with a rainbow spreadsheet that you're looking at is all of it.
Mm-hmm.
We've planned to use all of it and to integrate it on behalf of our kids for a variety of activities and a variety of efforts and initiatives to meet their needs and best utilize this funding by the purposes that this funding establishes and the timeline. So it's a little bit of a Rubik's Cube, but I think you'll appreciate the thinking that's gone into this. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Rose.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. As you can see, the spreadsheet is color coded. And just to make it easy and how to spread and how to explain that. I mean, I know that this spreadsheet is busy, but I want you to know that we did kind of color code and put a set categories on the activity that we want or we think that we're gonna spend, that we plan to spend the money. Categories go all the way from additional instruction that you saw all over, almost every single slide that I just went through. Additional support that is about not just personal, but yes, sir.
John, Trustee Fox, please.
Rosa, can you enlarge it so we can see it?
I don't think I can. Let me see.
Thank you.
That I did all, I think it is the maximum.
We can't see it.
You can see it. Okay, let me just.
Well, we can see it's there, but we can't read it.
Let me try something because I think I have it enlarged on my desk. Let me see
Okay.
let's see if it helps.
Let me stop presenting them.
I know it's not helpful right now, John, but when you have your own printout, you will see it.
Let's try this.
Oh yeah, we can toggle back to the email. Do you want me to do that? We can open the attachment.
what I can do, maybe if it's okay, I can move to the next slide where the graph is less busy, and I just can go through the categories and give you the details of the activity. I think that would be best. So that way we don't see this spreadsheet, which is busy. I do understand that. If it's okay. Is that okay? Can I present now and move to the next?
Hang on real quick. Let me
Okay.
see if I can get this up here. It's on Simbly. No, that's not it. That's not it.
Okay.
Budget workshop.
Okay, then can I present?
Budget workshop, Superintendent.
Okay, let's try that.
Yeah, right there.
Does that expand it at all?
Has it downloaded to your system? Did it open? Did it open on your
See,
screen,
that's
Superintendent?
completely different. It's attachment. Let me see.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so you have to stop sharing and then go back and get that attachment. And open your attachment and then present it.
Here it is.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay, now going, yeah, right there.
How's that?
I think that's better.
It's a little better? Okay.
That's a little better. It's still hard. I still can't read it. So I would just, like I said, we have this information, so I would just move ahead, Rosa.
Okay.
So,
But it would be helpful as you have it color coded though. Like the blue one is additional instruction, and then additional COVID-19. You have different color though. And then,
Superintendent, do you want to get rid of your not now and set as default for Acrobat up in the corner?
Oh, is that showing up? Jeez.
Yeah, okay.
since superintendent has the slide up, I'm gonna go over that slide. Okay, so over here we have the preliminary expenditure plan. Like Mr. Spalding, Superintendent Spalding said, you will be presented with the ESSER plan expenditure, which is the majority of the money, and is about $29.2 million. This particular graph has a total of 55.9 million because include all of the other resources, ESSER 1, 2, 3, expanded learning, GEAR 2, in-person, learning loss and mitigation. So additional instruction on the blue, the very first one, I'm gonna go from top to the bottom. Additional instruction, what are the details on the activities or expenditures that we are planning to utilize this funding? So we go from additional 30 minutes of instruction a day. We go, an additional instructions period for the students. And this is for the 3 years, 21-22, 22-23, and 23-24. This is something that is still negotiating. And then we move to the additional support for COVID. These are 2.31, $2 million. Additional is about bringing the director of categorical grant, which is a 50% funded by this and by LCAP, and temporary employees. You know that we have a lack of human resources, we cannot hire people. We're fighting for employees in between districts, and this additional support is about getting health technicians so they can help us with COVID-related things. We're looking into support staff, short-term custodians, and definitely increase the ASPs on the higher schools. Now, moving to the employee stipends, this is something that we wanted to do for our employees. Distance learning, people that is working in distance learning and their expenses, stipends to employees for the 21-22 year, 22 and 23 year, and hybrid learning stipends. So moving into the encumbrance, if you see the encumbrance is $2.8 million, that's something that is already being set aside for additional instruction support. Then we move to the facilities. Renovation and relocations. I mentioned that throughout the slides too. In-person instruction. What is the, yes, sir.
Rosa, I want to go back to the encumbrances. You said that 2.8 has been put aside, or has it already been spent?
Well, it's either spent or being encumbrance, meaning set aside. Encumbrance is set the money already. That is already assigned to do additional instructional support.
Right, okay.
By the time that I'm putting together this particular workshop, things already happened. We are already in September, of the year. So
Okay.
Things are already moving along, and things are needed, and plans are being created, and supporting some needs that we already have, and they're still coming because of the pandemic. I can
Gotcha.
give you more detail on that, but I wanted just to put it over there because it's already money set aside, and that is spent or set aside already.
Okay.
And,
Gotcha.
and this includes from technology, software and licensing, and part-time teachers, extra service, additional instruction, office staff, psychology support. So it's a variety of any, additional instructional support. It's a lot of things altogether.
Okay, thank you.
And then we move to the mental health, emotional support. Yes. This is about providing additional 9 FTEs in out of 4 hours. And another thing is about social emotional learning and anti-bullying curriculum. So we got to make sure that our students are getting that emotional support during this time. And then we move into the student support COVID. There's more support in terms of athletic equipment and attendance support through 2024, hydration stations, and I can go on and on and on. Supplies, summer instruction is there, $2 million. Supplies, maintenance, and personal protection, technology, testing. It's something very important about the testing. We get money, but we don't get any instructions in how we can get this testing, and everybody's trying to get companies that can help us with that. So it's been challenging trying to get all of these services when everybody is fighting for those services out there. It honestly, my head's off to Chief Romao, like it's continually pounding and pounding and pounding, and trying to look at the vendors and find the best vendor for us, and Dr. Patrick helping with all of this tracking and tracing of COVID. I mean, it's just amazing and challenging. So tutoring services, we have tutoring services, again, we're trying to set aside the best, the most to benefit our students. And virtual academy. Virtual academy, we're talking about a special ed virtual academy. We're talking about regular ed virtual academy. We're talking about virtual physical education through June 2024. We're talking about registrars for independent study and administrative support. Because remember, it's not just the virtual academy and the students. We have to bring additional support. We have to bring staff. We have to bring administrators. So that's how the expenditures, that's how we plan to spend our money. Now, once we move into the year and things are happening and needs either are rising or are dissipating, this plan is going to be adjusted. And once adjustments are made, we're going to come forward to you to discuss those, to have your approval. Right? So I'm just letting you know that things are going to happen, are going to change, and therefore we're going to come back to you saying, we said we plan to spend this money on this, but it dissipated, so now we don't think that we're going to spend all this money. But now this money that is not going to be spent over here, we needed to spend it over here because another need arise based of the pandemic or based on the state or the need of the site or the students. So just letting you know that these things are going to happen as we move forward. Superintendent Spanic, can you move to the next slide? Thank you.
Before you do that, let me ask a question. And that is, looking at that 50 grand, 55 billion, how much of that, and I don't know if you've been asked this before, Rosa, how much of that really goes to students?
Well, I will say that all of it, because everything is a comprehensive plan to support the instruction. To support the instruction. If we're talking about hydration stations, that's the students. If we're talking about air filters to increase or better the quality of the indoor airs in the classroom. If we're talking about additional FTEs to bring emotional of psychologists to provide the emotional support to the students, everything goes to the end to the students. Everything, these plans are for the students. And therefore,
the reason I ask that, Rosa, is that, you know, at least once a year I get a question. They said 80% of your money goes to the personnel. How much of that goes to the student? So I'm asking the same question to satisfy how I address those questions.
Remember that this one-time funding is addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. Before that, we do have already a structure in how we provide services to our students. Therefore, all of this that we have over here, all these planned expenditures are at the benefit, for the benefit to the students. That's what I will say. Everything is spent based on what we are trying to achieve of the purpose of this funding, which is addressing the students' needs that we had before pandemic, but it has been worsening with the pandemic.
Okay, so my answer would be, they all go to the students.
Yes.
Okay. Rosa said that.
Without support of teachers, without facilities, without filters, without lunches, without psychologists, without everything that is needed to teach these students, the money is not worth it. I mean, you have to have a plan and adjust as you go and plan to provide students what they need. Yes, sir.
Tony, Gross.
No. I just wanted to say, and I talked to the superintendent about this briefly, that I really want to thank you, Rosa, for putting this together, because ever since I knew that Rona money was coming to this district, the first question I asked is, well, I won't say that. The first question I asked is, what are we going to do? How are we going to work with all this money that comes in at one time that leaves the next day? And this really gives me a good pictorial of how the breakdown is. So this really helps me a lot. And I really want to thank you for I know it took a yeoman's job to put all this together. And I appreciate everything you and your staff have done to get this together for us. So thank you, Rosa.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And thank you to the rest of the cabinet team, because they were marching with me and they continue marching with me, putting together this plan. Yes, Dr. Young.
I see Dr. Young.
Yes, Dr. Young.
Who did he acknowledge? Did he acknowledge me? Oh, okay. Rosa, thank you for putting this together, but I think I need some tutorial services because numbers are not exactly my expertise. So I will be asking for a tutorial session with you.
Most definitely. Just tell me, I will look my calendar and will send you an email and I will set a time for us to talk.
I have the gist of it, but I have some questions that might not be exactly fitting into the gist. But anyway, I will.
Most definitely, we will do that.
Okay.
And then again, remember that this is more as a global picture of it. While we go into the details and take the time, then I will bring you the real detail of the expenditures. This is the plan that it was put together. All of this money needs to be assigned. All of this money needs to be planned and how to spend. So this is what we have for you.
We've spent an hour just time check. And how much more do you need, Rosa? I guess it depends on how many
So
questions.
done. I just one slide more, and one more slide, and I'm done. Yes, Mr. Spalding.
I was just going to say, if somebody had told me 4 years ago that we would be bringing something like this to our board and, $55 million of supplemental funding and expenditures on a list like this that shows so many different things that appear to be very disparate and unrelated, and just really a smorgasbord of different kind of expenditures. I would have told that person 4 years ago that they were crazy. But this is really kind of a sign and a signal of what COVID-19 has done to our work, to public education, to schools, to students, to staff. And I think it's important to kind of take a step back and realize that, first we had really a year and a half with schools that were shuttered, for the most part, or at least there was those last few weeks, last few months, limited time in the classroom. Then we have the work to really make up for that time and to really make up for what happened. Then we have the additional, kind of public health demands that have been placed on us to basically monitor and safeguard students and staff around this. That includes testing and vaccination and all those other kinds of things. And then we have, the need to prepare for any kind of new development or new twist or turn that this pandemic could take. And the last year that we can spend any of this money, that's the ESSER 3, and some of those funds expire earlier, but the last year is 2024. So we are both looking behind and looking into the crystal ball to just try to determine what are all our needs. And when you kind of look at this rainbow list, everything from mental health support to supplies to, filtration systems over ventilation, tutoring, a virtual academy that we didn't even know would exist, a few months ago, facility renovations, paraprofessionals. So it looks like a laundry list, but it's all been put together with a lot of forethought and a lot of, and really trying to anticipate what would come next. And my guess is that this is being done in school districts all over California about this time in these meetings, September, October, as we get ready to give the ESSER 3 plan. And probably a lot of people scratching their heads. But what I always tell people is that, when you go to schools, and a lot of you have been going to schools, and thank you for going to schools and checking it out. It looks like school with masks, but it's so much more than that. Because if you're going into those classrooms, you see a little black box in the corner that's filtering the air. What you don't see is that we've already replaced in the HVAC and the air conditioning system a very high quality, high filtration, very expensive filtering system for those classrooms. You'll see that there's somebody who has to contact trace if a case comes to campus and find out who that student has been around and contact those students and contact those families. So many things, so many disparate things that we've been, involved in. And not on this list is 26 separate vaccination clinics that we have hosted on our campuses with the help of Toro, Kaiser, and Safeway to make sure that we're trying to vaccinate families, kids, staff as fast as we can. So it's It's a whole lot of stuff. It has totally turned our operations as we know it, and some of you have done this work, with me over the years, running schools, and the whole thing has been turned upside down. And we're luckily we're getting funding, not always getting help, but we're getting funding. But we're trying as much as we can, in-house to do everything as much as we can. And hats off to staff, hats off to teachers, hats off to administrators, principals, cabinet, everybody who, bus drivers who are coming in to do contact tracing. Everybody is stepping up and stepping in and trying to make this thing work. Dr. Young, you had a question.
My question is, Phil, you said we have vaccinations, 26 of them, stations that have been set up with the assistance of Toro, Kaiser. Why hasn't that been a on the news or a vocal points as a?
Well, we're working on that. We're working on getting that word out. I mean, we've gotten the word out to the community on a regular basis in Parent Square, and we've been, advertising it. So we're getting a response. There are people coming to get their shots, and they come to get their first shots, and they come to get their second shots. And I've visited a couple of those where I mean, you see lots of people. So people in the community know that these are available. They've been notified they're coming out. Not sure why the newspaper hasn't paid attention to it, but we're going to try to make sure that information gets out, because I think that's something we need to be very proud of. And I think we've certainly done, we've certainly taken our fair share of the public health responsibility to try to make it happen for our community and for our kids. And again, many thanks to Safeway, and particularly Kaiser and Toro, who have just, really, really, really stepped up to help us out. But that's a good question, Dr. Young.
Well, I think that's news media. I think that's Channel 7, Channel 4, Channel 2, whatever channel it takes to come out here and do a story on that, because it's very unique within itself. If you need some names, I do have some names that you can contact those particular people on those particular channels.
Stephen Nichols is working on something for us right now. As you know, Stephen is our communication consultant, and we're going to get that word out. They find us for other kinds of things. Not always for the good news, but we're going to see if we can't get that publicized, because I think we've done a tremendous job as a district to try to put a dent in this virus.
People that were homegrown here that are on two major stations.
Mm-hmm.
I work for two major stations, so it wouldn't be, a problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you have their contact information, send it on to me, and I'll make sure.
I sure will.
Please do. Thanks.
Okay. Any other question before we move to the next slide?
Moving on, Rosa.
Mr. Spalding, can you move to the next slide since you have it up? Okay, so here are the next steps. The district is in the process of engaging the stakeholder, which is the community. Okay, that is very important for this plan. So Ms. Sherry Summer is just collecting the input from the community, from parents, so we can put it and embed it into the plan. We will present the final expenditure plan to you, like I said before, on or before October 29th. And one more thing, I mentioned while I was going through the color-coded graph, that some of that amount, those numbers is about employees negotiations, and this involves the additional instructional time. So this is what my and our update was in regards of the budget for 2020, 21-22, the recap of the year end, but mainly, most importantly, the plan that we worked and we will continue working and bring it to your to you for approval on October the 29th. And that concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Rosa.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Let me entertain John Fox's questions now. He has 3 of them, I think. Maybe more.
No, I'm good. Rosa did a great job. Thank
Oh,
you.
wonderful.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Christy, you haven't asked a question yet. So.
I have no questions. I just wanted to thank Rosa for the information. I may tag along with Dr. Young when she meets with you.
Most definitely, I will invite you as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Vice President Gross.
Yeah, I may come to the tutorial too. Rosa, just a real
Brown
quick
Act,
question.
Brown Act, Brown Act.
Oh, yes, we'll be. I have to stay away. But Rosa, real quick question. By law, we have to keep that $5 million in reserve, escrow money for learning loss. Is that money in now?
When you're looking at the plan, you're talking about this plan, or you're talking about our budget?
No, I'm talking about back on the budget at the escrow. There was a note there that $5 point something million had to be kept in a reserve for a learning loss.
The plans do have certain money allocated for certain activities. And not just not the learning loss, but we do have some money that is actually designated to para-educators or para-professionals.
Right.
Therefore, we have to spend the money within the actual requirements of the funding in order for us to be in compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So any percentage of every plan, of every resource that has been assigned or given to us and assigned to certain activity, that activity has to be respected. And if it is $5 million or if it is $10 million, but if it is assigned just to a certain activity, we got to spend the money within it, that activity, nothing else. It can be like, oh, I have $10 million for paraprofessionals, but I spent only $8 million. And then I use that $2 million for something else. No, we have to plan.
No, but no, I'm not talking about taking moving money from one category to another. I'm just meant that I thought I saw where we had to bank $5 million away, and for the next 3 or what until 2024, specifically for learning loss money.
Yes.
Tony, are you referring to the percentage that we have to have in reserve? That is
not
required?
The percentage, the number itself.
That is
I think we got to be
required of-
careful because we're using the words reserve, and reserve has a whole different connotation. I think it's designated. It's probably a better word, and that's, yes, 20% needs to be designated for learning loss or learning loss activities, and that's kind of, you'll see a lot of those actually in the spreadsheet that we've given, and you'll see that we meet the 20%, but it's not meant to be held back, and it's not meant to be held in reserve. It's meant to be expended, but specifically for that purpose. And the other thing that Rosa talked about is paraeducators. There's in some of the state money, there's a requirement to set aside 10% for paraeducators.
Yeah.
And again, that's not held back. It's not banked, but it's designated. And so that's already built in to the spreadsheet that you saw.
And that was my issue. I guess I looked at the word reserve and reserved and it's just different. It's different.
Yes,
So.
yes. And I'm sorry about that oversight. I should have used assign or allocated to this specific activity or expenditure.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good afternoon, Dr. Patrick. You're on, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Just to Superintendent Spalding's point that 10% is set aside for paraprofessionals, because I don't want the board to think that we're only going to hire paraeducators that are normally attached to special ed. It's paraprofessionals, which would be any classified staff that directly support instruction. So mental health providers, some paraeducators, but those positions, bilingual tutors that directly support instruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patrick.
Superintendent Spalding, knowing the numbers that has been presented to us, how do you determine what goes to technology and to academics and to mental health? How do you, the cabinet and you, make the determination? Is it on needs, or is it the loudest mouth that gets the biggest notice?
That's a good question. It's really based on needs, and so sometimes you'll see some numbers that don't appear very dramatic and some that appear very dramatic. And a lot of that's going to be based on cost. So when you see $2.3 million for testing, you're like, well, yeah, but what about social emotional learning? Well,
Right.
we might be able to achieve social emotional learning with a smaller figure, or we may already have support staff in certain areas that we need to augment, maybe supplement, but not bring lots and lots of new people into because we have some support. So that's where we really sat down as a group, on the cabinet to really work. And it's taken a while. I mean, we've done this over a number of days spaced out over the last couple of months to really look at this. But this is really our best effort to say, like, what are the needs? What are the costs? And, where do we apply this funding best and most skillfully to meet the needs of students? So just because things don't seem equal, or just because it's not like the pie is divided up evenly, know that we put a lot of thought into this, and that we've determined that this is where the funding needs to fall and why, and these are the best allocations for this funding.
So out of this funding, District 1 versus District 2 and District 3 could differ.
You bet.
Because of their particular priorities and needs.
You bet. And they might differ based, the priorities and needs. It might be, they might see opportunities to get certain kinds of things or certain kinds of help that they don't have right now. There's a lot of things that, we've put into place, again, social emotional learning. We've been working on that for a while. And some of the things that we've done over the last few years, we've allocated more for psychologists, for example, in the last few years, for mental health professionals in the last few years. So that's not to say that's not important. It's not to say that that's not a need. But in some cases, we've gotten ahead of the game and have been able to, do certain things over time. And so it's a matter of maybe supplementing or augmenting, but maybe there are other areas where we need to have a whole new expense. And so, yeah, I think different districts, each one of these plans is going to look a little bit different, but they all have to make sure that they're meeting the requirements and the criteria of the funding sources so they don't get snagged later through an audit.
How are we aware, or how do we find out if we are supportive of the stakeholders who have perhaps closest to the students? How do we know?
I think we need to monitor this. I think we need to take a look at how these funds are expended. I think there's going to be a constant, a constant review of this, not just what the results are and how it's expended, but if there's anything where there's any kind of savings that might be redirected, or if there are any places where the expense is larger than we expected.
Those are my questions. Thank you. Are there further questions? If there are none, this is the time to praise Rosa Loza and really give her a thumbs up or a clap your hands and really express our appreciation. And of course, the cabinet. Rosa alluded to that many times and how they've been able to assist her and encourage her to do the best that she can. So thank you for the cabinet likewise. And the last but not least, how about Bill? Does he deserve praises from us? No. They said no. The Superintendent Spalding. So thank you so much, folks. And any last questions? If none, then what else? What's the agenda? Ken, what's the last agenda items that I need to have? I don't have it with me.
Superintendent has the.
I do. Now I got to find it. Here we go.
Okay.
The strategic plan.
Yes.
strategic planning. Okay.
Here we
Thank you.
go.
Andy. Okay. Thanks, Rosa, again. See ya. Have
Thank
a
you,
good
sir.
rest.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Can everybody see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now that I've shown it, now I'm going to take you to another slide.
Okay.
I think I might have some feedback for Google. There we go. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay. So
No.
this was attached. How's it going now? Can everybody see?
Barely, yeah.
200%.
I'm looking at a snail chart. Okay, there it is.
50%.
There, okay, I can see it now.
Your use Acrobat in Chrome is still in the upper right
Oh, that
corner.
dumb thing keeps popping up. Sorry about that. So I just want to bring this back to the board. You know, we've really been having an ongoing discussion around our strategic plan, and our facilitators have assigned us all some homework. And as the homework has been turned in, we've been working to compile the results. And so last week at our last board meeting, you saw us compile kind of the composition of the SPAC, and we're already starting to have conversations with these groups about who they would send and starting to put that together and ultimately schedule the SPAC meetings in October and November. And that was about 20, you'll recall, it's about 27 people, and some were students and some were teachers and some were, you know, informal community leadership and formal community leadership, all that. So that part is done. The two other items were the elders, which I think we're going to get to a little later because I think we need a little more clarification, and I'm working with our two facilitators to help us a little bit to kind of clarify that. And then this item, which were the strategic pillars. And if you'll recall, what they asked us to do and what I asked you to do is think about kind of the major goals or themes that would really drive this work. You know, what would you give to the SPAC to consider as really kind of the major items that we would want to build into the strategic plan, the things that really drive the work. And then we get to the details and the tasks and the objectives and the timelines later. What are the big things? So as the board was sending me these items, Ken did a beautiful job. Thank you, Ken, for helping us compile your results, your information. I noticed some interesting trends. And so what I did first was in this leftmost category, or this leftmost column, is I captured what already exists in our LCAP. And remember, LCAP is something we've been chasing for a lot of years, and we've had these ongoing goals. They've been mostly the same for a number of years. And then we build a budget and we build a set of activities and the bulk of the money that we spend around these activities. Interestingly enough, a number of you suggested the kind of things that are very similar to our LCAP goals. And so I wanted to capture that. And so where I saw a thematic similarity on your proposals and your results, I put them and I connected them to LCAP goals. Now, some are a little bit looser, a little grayer, but there are some themes that are very, very similar. So, for example, one of our LCAP goals is increase parent and community engagement. You know, that's a laudable goal and one that I think we always chase. But you'll see, and I put your initials by your responses. There are certain thematic things that either kind of get to that or are very similar or can be built, within that. So we talk about collaborative leadership within and outside the district, teachers, administrators, civic leaders, community participants together. So that community engagement, and maybe we redefine community to be both inside and outside the district, but that seemed to be very similar. Total community involvement was a suggestion. High engagement and involvement with community through recruitment, that we're doing a better job of recruiting that engagement. So these are items that were submitted that I attached to existing current LCAP goals. So when I say potential pillars or themes in that third column here, I'm proposing, a same or similar goal. Now we might want to change the language. We might want to make the language a little more universal, but I think there's a theme there that emerges with enough people who are responding that carries out a goal that we've been working at and could probably, maybe be doing a better job with, but seems to be consistent with the current LCAP goal. So I did that with a couple of our LCAP goals. Create safe, supportive, engaging learning environment for all students, all staff and students. And again, safe school environment in and outside the classroom. Safe school environment promotes learning, enhance my school attitude by students and teachers. Supportive and engaging learning environment. So again, certain people's responses started to kind of bunch up and be very, very similar to this goal. Now, probably more we can do with a goal, probably a better job we can do with a goal, more that we need to draw out of our SPAC process to do this. But again, our current LCAP goals aren't far off from some of what you're proposing. Same with increasing number of students graduating with A through G requirements met. That shows up a couple of times. People bring this forward, say we need to be continuing to pursue high academic standards, A through G requirements. So again, I'm proposing those are connected enough that I think those goals are still relevant to us. Now, a couple areas where there's new information, new results that I'm seeing from a number of people that I think suggest potential new goals, new pillars. Folks responded, equity lens and programs and norms, focus on individuals' identifying needs. Equity comes up. And I'm not surprised by this, one, because of the way our board feels about equity and how strongly this board values equity and equitable outcomes. Also, the work that we've done most recently with Nicole Anderson and Deborah Keys-Wright on equity and the role that we have as an educational institution to pursue equity. But that comes up a few times. So I have in this third column, remember I said same or similar, I'm proposing a theme or a pillar that says focus on equity and ensure equitable quality outcomes for all students. It doesn't have to be that language. It doesn't have to be that title, but I'm bunching those together because I know equity is a very, very important topic for this board. And I know will be an important topic going forward. And enough of you came up with this that I said, let's do this. Again, doesn't have to be my language here in the third column, but I'm trying to bunch it together into an equity bucket that we call out. John, did you have, Trustee Fox, do you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to let you know the county board that we are extending the equity training to phase 2 starting October 4th, Monday. So what you just mentioned with Nicole Anderson and Deborah Keys, that will be continuing with the 3 series starting October 4th and November 8th and then January 24th. So the whole county of Solano will continue with that.
Excellent. Dr. Young, did you have a comment or question?
John, the question to John and then back to you, Superintendent Spaulding. John, is the equity that's going to be offered a second phase to the first phase, or is it the first phase offered again?
No, it's second phase, and Nicole Anderson has looked throughout the state of California what we had with the first training and what our district struggles currently, and that's where we got the topics. And the topics, I'll tell you real quick, are on October 4th, it's going to be defining equity through an equity statement. On November 8th, it'll be strategic facilitation and response to the barriers of equity work. On January 24th, it will be implementation of equity work through an equity policy. So those are the new 3 dates and 3 topics to continue. And I think you can tell they're based on looking at our policy, our statements, and how are we actually dealing and working with equity or not. So I think it's going to correlate wonderful to the section that Superintendent Spaulding is going through right now.
My next question, Superintendent Spalding, are we as a board going to be enrolled in that second phase in October?
You know, we could be. I'll talk to Mr. Montgomery about that and see if we will get out calendar invites to everyone on that.
And the third question is, as we put these pillars into place, I feel that a focus on equity and accountability within that same should be there, because you say focus on equity, ensure equitable quality outcome for all students with accountability attached to it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think accountability is a key. Accountability, I think, is going to thread throughout the entire strategic plan, because we're not going to build a strategic plan just to ignore it.
I guess
that's why I call it ensure. I use words like ensure. Like ensure means you better do it.
I guess what I'm alluding to, I mean, let's say I can see you on the board. We sat through very experienced equity training, Andrade and Singleton, all of them. But
Yes,
we still to this day don't see anything that's equitable.
And what I would say is a couple of things. Number one, if we put this in a strategic plan, everybody's going to be looking for us to deliver. So I think and the other thing I would say is it doesn't have to be this language. I tried to find, like, how do we, how do I capture it? And I could probably spend more time on it, come up with even something better. But what I tried to get out there is ensure, which is like ensure, you got to do it. Quality outcomes for all students. So it's like all means all. We've had that conversation before. Like I said, it can be wordsmithed later. That's no problem. I'm not married to this language, but I tried to capture something that would both talk about equity and and really a commitment to it that we'd be held accountable to.
Yeah, I want this to be a living document. I don't want this to be a document that you put on the shelf, because that's what you did 40 years ago. I took 40 years in the system. So yeah, 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's still, all they do is put it on the shelf and dust it off. That's it. To say that I checked off, I did what I was supposed to do. But as far as me doing it, I'm not going to really do it. I'm just going to check it off.
Right. Well, remember what the SPAC comes up with, and what you ultimately, finish out with in this is a series of items, and it's what are our actions going to be over time? And so it's not just saying, we aspire to be a district that supports equity, but it's like, we're going to do this and this and this and this. And that's really, and then it's up to me to be bringing these things and the proof of this to you, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting in the next 3 to 5 years to really track our progress. So you hold me accountable and I hold everybody else accountable. And, that's really that's how a strategic plan becomes.
Well,
meaningful.
yeah. Well, I remember some were held accountable. I know at Bethel, we were held accountable because we were under the leadership of Tony Gross and William Spalding. So
and you,
we were held accountable after Singleton came and Andrade came. We were all held accountable, and it was check and balance. I don't know what happened at Vallejo High School.
well, I'll move on to the next item.
Step out there for no comment.
I figured I'd just like keep going. So another thing that came up, it kind of over and over again.
Excuse me, Superintendent. On this theme of equity with CSBA, they are forming a group. I think it's 10 superintendent and 2 trustees, or it's the other way around, that is being taught the same actual courses that we are taking. and they will be used by CSBA as the experts in equity.
Excellent.
Just thought I'd let you know that.
Excellent. I'm really glad to see this really be a theme and get called out. And I think to the extent that we can make this meaningful, and it's always going to require work. But I think that I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this is going to drive a lot of what we do and really make, really be meaningful for our kids in the long run. The last item, well, not the last, the second to last item is that the high expectations comes up again and again. High expectations for providing rigorous learning, rigorous and relevant learning, rigorous instruction, high support to students, excellence, no excuses, and that these high standards are held up for everybody, and it's something we commonly agree on. So because I got a little cluster on this, I put this language together. Again, doesn't have to be my language. High expectations for teaching and learning, commonly held and fully implemented. So we're setting up, like, this is the standard here where we want to be. This is what we're expecting, and this is what we're going to come and see to make sure that we're doing this for all classrooms, all kids, all learning experiences. So there's that. And I see Dr. Young, do you have a question?
Did you acknowledge me or who?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The question was to President Ubaldi. Who are the experts that you were referring to in the CSBA?
Yeah, Dr. Young, they will be trained by Anderson and what's her name? They have not gotten the training that you and I have had so far, and they will be.
So if they haven't gotten the training, so we should be the ones that are experts.
Well,
We already had the training.
I may have an input, but CSBA directs that. Yeah. If you want to be
moving, we got to keep moving.
Okay. Anyway, they will be developing this expertise that will be used by CSBA to perhaps visit schools, visit districts. I don't know, but that's and Nicole and Party will be trained by them. Thank you, Superintendent.
I think Trustee Fox had his hand up as well.
Excuse me. Okay. Yeah. Trustee Fox, please.
Yes, Superintendent Spalding. I think my initials are there when you go down a little. This is one you and I talked about, especially so the common expectations, instructional leadership, and if you go up a little, so then the accountability. So I like what you said. You put it in a third column: high expectations for teaching and learning, commonly held and fully implemented. As long as everyone knows what that is, what the highest key standards are that we need to see in all classrooms, the rigor, the expectations, no excuses, but how do we make sure that's accountable? And if that's through principal walkthroughs in classrooms, how many times a week, put in a spreadsheet, reported back by Heather and Mike or whoever. I just want to make sure there's accountability connected, that how do we get the information back saying, yes, X, Y, and Z in this category is happening. It's happening weekly and monthly, and this is what we see. So I just wanted to take it even to another level of how we're going to be accountable for that.
That's a good point, Trustee Fox. And I think what happens is there are different layers to this. So when you have this, your first layer is your strategic plan that really calls out the pillars, the goals, the major themes that you want to go after. Then there's more, kind of statements of kind of activities or, kind of the kinds of things that you're going to do and demonstrate. And then I think it gets to even a deeper layer, which is like, okay, what's the proof? What's the evidence that these things are occurring? And so all those kind of get layered and developed as time goes by. And so we're at that first phase now where we're just calling out what it is that the board cares about and wants to make sure. And the board cares about a lot of stuff, but what are the major themes that we would want to hand over to the SPAC and say, okay, this is what counts for us. This is where we want you to spend some time. Trustee Gardner.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
I-
that explanation. I did want to say when we get to that, though, then we can put in the other components we talked about, like differentiating teaching or Bloom's taxonomy, or just leveled thinking, the engagement towards the rigor. So you're saying we'll do that later. We'll connect all those specifics to each of these for the accountability. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's something that we would probably come up with as a staff. You know, you're going to want the proof, so we're going to have to kind of come up with what is the proof and what is the evidence, and then we're bringing that to you. Trustee Gardner.
Well, I think that these create opportunities for looking at what we currently have and what we need to change and what we need to do in order to meet the new pillars. So it's going to create opportunities I think, for teachers to get together, look at their curriculum to determine what are the levels that they want their students to attain. What are the highest levels, the most important levels of learning in each one of the areas, and then to determine how you're going to teach that, how you're going to assess that, and then move forward. But there's a lot of opportunity here to just examine current practice and identify areas that really have the neediest, or are the neediest, in order to get to where we need to be based on what the pillars are. If that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. The last item that I had is just kind of a catch-all, and there were you all shared a lot of ideas and a lot of things, and so some of those were kind of one-offs where it wasn't necessarily tied to one of the LCAP goals or wasn't really connected to what somebody else had to say. So it's not to say that these are not noble or important or good, but it's just to say that there wasn't really a cluster that I could really tie it to. But I want to just make sure it was noted for the record that you know, all your contributions have been you know, put forward and have been put into the record. I'm proposing that we stick with the 5, mostly because once you kind of get past like 3 to 5 pillars, you get to 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 12. It gets very, very hard to implement. Very, very hard to monitor. And it, you know, it's kind of, when everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. You know what I mean? So it's so I would propose we stay with the 5. But I think we've got, and you know, and we can change the language if you like language that's better than what I'm putting out there or what's in the LCAP. But I think we've got 5 solid pillars. You know, even the ones that we've had for a while, that we can continue to pursue, that I think really represent the thoughts and the feelings and the desires and the goals of this board. Dr. Young, you had something. Oh, you're muted.
Dr. Young, you're on.
I wait for you to acknowledge me, Dr. Gibaldi. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The very last one that you put up there, what was the last one? I think this one should be over on the other ideas. Failure, not that one. No. Yeah. Reevaluation educational system in Vallejo Unified School District. Tony Gross and I have talked about that a lot. We need to take a closer look at what is working and what is not working, because we continue after year after year after year. We're not showing any growth at all. You can look at the data. I've looked at the data year after year after year. We're not showing any growth in the particular areas, Afro-American, Hispanic students, as far as meeting expectations of the norm. So something is wrong there. Either we're not teaching in the right modality, the instructions that's giving us, or we have to find some other way to deliver the system. We need to teach the teachers how to deliver the system in order for the kids to maintain. How are you going to get higher learning. What was it? Higher learning. When you have children that are struggling to learn, period.
I would pose that this whole strategic plan is a reevaluation of the educational system. And if we commit to the things that we say we're going to do, especially the equity thing. And Dr. Young, you brought it up beautifully when you talk about the accountability. It's not just equity. Everybody can say equity. I don't know how many school districts I've been to where you look over the dais of the school board and it says, educate all students, and somebody's underlined all. And when you pull up the data, that's not the case. And so I think that if we're serious about all this, this is a reevaluation of our educational system. If we're producing a good strategic plan and we're holding everybody accountable, you're holding me accountable, and we're reporting this on a regular basis, and we gear our efforts around doing these 5 things, and we actually make progress, I think that a lot of that has been achieved. I just assume the kind of the reevaluation is kind of embedded within it, because when I hear from all of you what you want, you all want us to reevaluate what we've been doing and do this better. And that's one of the reasons we kind of went down the kind of the pathway we're taking with strategic planning. We're doing very unconventional strategic planning. We're going to get a lot of information, and we're going to hear from people, and they're going to have they're going to have a lot. It's just going to be interesting because we're going to get a lot of feedback that we don't normally get. And so, anyways, that's what I would pose. And I think Trustee Fox, I think you were next, and then Trustee Gardner.
Okay, thank you. For the bottom items, I agree with you, Superintendent Spalding. The 5 need to be just 5 focuses for the 5 pillar areas, like you connected them to the LCAP. But I think also, like what Dr. Young was just talking about for Tony Gross's right there, we can fit I see how we can plug some of those into the other pillar areas above. They connect, like mine for the customer service. We can put that in with the community engagement. That's one of the ways we should be engaging with them. You know what I mean? I think, and then the one Dr. Young was just saying, we can put that in with the education, high rigor and standards, and what needs to be done. So I think when we get to the details, which you said comes next, I think there is a way to plug those in if they are important enough to us so that they are being covered. I don't know. Does that?
No, that's a good point, Trustee Fox. And one of the reasons I put this on this list is I didn't want to necessarily discard or abandon these ideas. I wanted them to be out there for you to see and out there for the SPAC to see, because I agree. I think there are ways to build these in and connect them to some existing things. For example, like when we're like talking about customer service, for example, we talk about what's the one I saw? High expectations for teaching and learning. So maybe that's high expectations for teaching and learning and service to our students. So again, we're working that in. We don't discard it. We don't forget it. We build that in. And remember, the work of the development of the strategic plan is to build in, to kind of scaffold. These are the roofs. Each of these are the roof, but then there's the scaffolding and the foundation on this, and that's what comes in afterwards. So yeah, I'm not proposing that this be erased or taken out. I'm just proposing that it didn't neatly fit right away into these larger categories, but I think they need to be remembered. And I think, like you said, there are ways to work this in. Trustee Gardner and then Trustee Young.
Well, I was going can you go back to the last slide or the last 3 areas? Because those really they're kind of subsets of
Up or down?
This one right here.
Okay.
Because the innovative environment, that really is too equitable. We want to encourage innovation with all of our students. And and the failure is not an option. Failure actually is an option, because I think that you learn through failure, but you have to recognize that. So you have to recognize that when you fail, it's a learning opportunity for you to succeed. But we're going to constantly reevaluate the education system here through the whole process. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do the strategic plan in the first place, is because we keep doing the same things over and over again and expect a different result. And that result is the same over and over again. So, I mean, this is a new way of looking at what we need and what we want and what the children in Vallejo deserve. Can you go back up to, I think it was the first one. Oh, no, it was the A through G. To go back to the A through G. I really think that we need to include, and it would be great to increase the number of students graduating with A through G requirements, but I think that we need to recognize the fact that many of our students aren't going to be graduating, and they should be celebrated for graduating with the career technical education classes that they could have. So they need to, that to me is an equitable issue. You know, it's equity on this hand for the college going kids, but it's also equity on this hand for the other kids that are going to go into the workforce. And who knows, maybe eventually they will go to college and they will, you know, get that degree. But I think that we've placed too much emphasis on our college going kids at the expense of those kids that are not going to college. And I think we need to emphasize the A through G curriculum, but I also think that we also need to recognize and emphasize the CTE curriculum as well.
And that's a very good point, Trustee Gardner. And I see that, you know, in both of these cases, career and career show up. So I think, you know, it's a matter of probably reworking that LCAP language that deals with not just A through G, but a pathway forward. Or
right.
What we want our students to do is to graduate from high school with some skills and certifications, and with, you know, really with a jump start, you know, really kind of being catapulted forward into something that is going to be meaningful and useful and viable for them, both in their life afterwards, something that's going to, you know, that's going to give them a good career, you know, a good existence. So I think that's one. Maybe instead of saying we go similar on that particular LCAP and try to expand our horizons a little bit.
Okay, I've said my piece.
Dr. Young. I think you're muted, Dr. Young.
Thank you, Tony. We have a lot. Failure is not an option. That is correct. But we continue to have a large failure rate, a large non-graduate rate. Education is a civil right. So we're going to have to find some way to not, that ADG requirement is kind of like, it was there when we were going through, but it wasn't emphasized so much. So as you said, we need to do something about that, because that's a segregation line right there. If you look at the ABG requirements and you look at the graduation rate, most of the kids that are failing are the kids that are not meeting the ABG requirement because of one reason or another. Either they haven't been taught it in that particular subject area, the teacher hasn't retaught. So we need to train our teachers also to recognize failure, reteach it, and then check for understanding, and then move the kid on. It's so much in content, gotta get this, gotta get that, gotta get that, that we lose the whole child in the process. We lose them early. We lose them when they do that transformation into middle school. That's where we lose them. 6th grade is where we lose them. They do great all the way 1 through 5th. And then 6th grade, they hit that 6th grade. You need to go back to when we had junior high school, when the grades were a 7, 8, and 9. And when you got to go over to the high school, it was 10, 11, 12. And if you go back and look at the graduation rate, It was a little bit higher than it is now. And you had more students on campus. Thank you.
So I guess it's not an action item, but I guess I'm looking for, like maybe a thumbs up and head nods that, if this is, and I'll make some changes around the age or G requirements. Is this something that I could move forward as we are collecting SPAC membership and schedule those meetings as something for them to start to grapple with? And they may even come up with better language than I have, but really to capture the themes that this board feels strongly about.
When do you wish to have this back for us to approve?
I think it becomes part of the whole strategic planning process. So I think what I'm looking for tonight is the green light to deliver this to the SPAC and to start working on this when we first schedule those meetings.
Yeah, I'm truly grateful for the input from the board, and it seems like we're moving toward that same consciousness or same level of concern for every students that we have, both slow learners and quick learners. I'm the former.
I'm the former too.
Well, then we can help them succeed. Superintendent Spalding.
Trustee Gross, I think I saw Dr. Baldy. I think I saw Trustee Gross's hands go up and down. So
I did. I'm playing with it.
All right, you're on, sir.
Yeah, I just really wanted to quickly add that Superintendent Spalding, we're talking about the go ahead. I would say go ahead and just do your wordsmithing on it, just as long as you can be inclusive of these items. And I do find it interesting though that a lot of this kind of mirrors our LCAP. Mm-hmm. And those of us who've been in education for years remember district plans like this from way back when. And if you look at those, they're not too much different than what we're looking at tonight. So the issue, the real question is then, well, why isn't the plan in 1999, why wasn't that successful in 2021? And it comes down to that word that people are talking about is accountability. Making people accountable and perseverance, going through with it. So I think that the strategic plan is unique in that process because it publicizes all of these educational statements that we're going to try to make. So I'm really like I said, I'm really very optimistic about this, and especially with the outcome. So Superintendent Small, I would go ahead and say, yeah, wordsmith it, and let's get the show on the road.
Dr. Young? Dr. Young?
I have some concerns about certain areas, but I know working with Bill, we can tweak them. I still have some concerns. I don't think it's strong enough language. I really don't.
Thank you, Dr. Young. My point is, I love the input from the trustees, and as you develop the wordings, et cetera, I don't want to lose them. And especially the point that Dr. Young and Trustee Garner spoke of, and that is not losing those kids, but having them graduate and not losing them at the third grade or sixth grade. And we have definitely failed many of our students. And so if there's some way we can be assured that we'll find a methodology, the mental health, or the encouragement to enable them to pursue it. And having the program that would enable them to succeed. And that's something that many of us have been saying. We got to create the program to allow them to succeed and develop and be part of the workforce. both professionally and career. And with that in mind, I give my thumbs up also.
Okay. Okay.
I think Trustee Gardner, did we see your thumb up? I don't recall.
Yeah, I agree. I give the thumbs up, and I kind of agree with Dr. Young in that some of the statements it's like each one of the statements need that the outcome. You know, what are we going to do if, or how are we going to ensure that this is, and that should be in the actions, and then the results, the situation, action, and then the result, and then constant monitoring, and that needs to be built in. I know you know this, Bill. It needs to be written into the plan. It's a living document. It has to be a living document, and we have to be responsible for it as a board. But every person in the district needs to be responsible to ensure that this document is acted upon on a consistent basis, and that's the topic of conversation. Should always be this document. Where are we? And so if that somehow can be written in, and I'm sure that it will be somehow with the pillars, those pillars are the strength of the district. And we have to, that's what will be judged on, basically, is whether or not we can sustain those pillars.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great start.
So I'm taking it that I've got a green light here, so I will wordsmith. I'm thinking about those accountability words. Maybe at the end of each one we say "or else," but we'll figure it out. And I think it kind of goes back, Trustee Gardner, something you said is that, you know, a lot of the meat in this is what you put below these pillars and what you commit to, and I think that's where a lot of the accountability will be built in. Dr. Young, you had a question.
Dr. Young, you're muted, ma'am.
Now that I got this mute down, I'm just muting myself all the way through. I forgot the question. I put my hand down.
I will stop sharing this and go back to the agenda. I think we have one or two more procedural items.
Yeah, we just have, let me see. We have the community forum. If there are any comments from the community, Ms. Thomas?
No comments. I don't have my mic in, Ken.
Okay.
No comments.
No comments, okay. And the last thing is, are there any closed session items? Okay. And that would be it, Mr. Superintendent.
Okay.
Dr. Young, did you remember? Go ahead. We don't want you to lose it.
But I don't think it was related to that. But anyway, I noticed, I don't know if this is right, but anyway, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. But we have a meeting, a board meeting on the day that we're at the SB, our conference.
That's a very astute pickup on that. So one of the things that I was going to propose to you is that meeting be canceled, and that we have just the one December meeting, or we can postpone it. And another item that I will probably send to you soon is that I'm looking at one more special meeting in September. Some of you were on last night on the CSBA regional meeting where they talked about AB 361, which talks about how you can continue to implement virtual meetings. And so there's a procedural item that must be done before October that allows you to continue the virtual process of meetings. And so that procedural item has to be done based on what I'm getting from legal, a lot of legal support. It should be done before October 1st. So, and it would be there might be a couple of closed session items with that meeting too, but I'm looking at potentially a meeting on the 29th.
Okay.
And then we can probably bring the change of the December meeting Dr. Young, you pointed out, probably at the meeting on October 6th to formalize that if we're going to ultimately cancel or postpone that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Trustee Fox?
And again, the county board is sending out the invitations and the registration. So Monday, October 4th at 6 o'clock will be the first of the equity series. So if people just know the date. And then November 8th and January 24th. Hopefully Kenneth and Rhonda heard those as well. So when Kenneth gets it, there's a link that will be, you have to correct the link, and that's how you register. You just put your name and your email, and that's how Nicole sends out the Zoom link, is through the email when you do the link.
That's the county school board,
Yes.
Monday the 4th.
Monday, October 4th at 6 o'clock is the first of the second series of equity.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, and it's now 6:06, and the meeting is adjourned with many thanks.
Thank
For the
you.
staff.
Very productive meeting. Thank you
Yeah,
all.
thank you.